A 300-year-old British drug maker just spent $10.6 billion in cash on a company most people have never heard of. GSK, one of the oldest names in medicine, has agreed to buy an American cancer drug developer called Nuvalent. It is GSK's biggest acquisition in more than a decade. And here is the twist that makes this story so revealing. GSK is paying a fortune to buy its way back into a business it deliberately walked away from 10 years ago. This is a story about patent cliffs, panic, and the oldest question in corporate strategy. Do you build the future or do you buy it? Let me break down exactly what happened and whether GSK just made a brilliant move or an expensive mistake. Start with the deal itself, because the numbers are eye-watering. GSK is paying $124 per share in cash for Nuvalent, a Boston-based clinical-stage biopharmaceutical company. That price is a roughly 40% premium over where Nuvalent's shares were trading. In total, the deal is worth about $10.6 billion, and GSK expects it to close in the third quarter of 2026, pending regulatory clearance and shareholders tendering their shares. $10.6 billion. For a company that, and this is the crucial part, does not yet have a single approved product on the market. Let me sit on that for a second, because it is the whole story. Nuvalent is what the industry calls clinical stage. That means its drugs are still going through trials and regulatory review. There is no big revenue stream yet. GSK is not buying profits. It is buying a bet, a very specific, very expensive bet on 3 lung cancer drugs. So, what exactly is GSK getting? 3 assets, all aimed at lung cancer. The 2 crown jewels are drugs called zidesamtinib and neladalkib. In plain English, these are next-generation, highly selective inhibitors. Precision drugs designed to switch off specific genetic drivers of non-small cell lung cancer, the most common form of the disease. They target 2 particular mutations known as ROS1 and ALK. GSK and many analysts believe these could be best in class, meaning better than what is currently available for those patients. There is also a third, earlier stage drug targeting a different mutation called HER2. So GSK is buying a whole little franchise of precision cancer medicine in one transaction. And you need to understand why that franchise is so valuable, because it explains the price. Lung cancer is the single deadliest cancer in the world. It kills more people than any other. Non-small cell lung cancer makes up the large majority of those cases. For decades, the only tools were blunt: chemotherapy, radiation, surgery. But a revolution has happened. Doctors can now test a tumor, find the exact genetic mutation driving it, and hand the patient a pill designed to target that mutation specifically. When it works, the results can be dramatic, and patients often stay on these drugs for years. That combination, a huge patient population and long-duration, high-priced treatment, is exactly why every major drug maker on Earth is scrambling for precision oncology assets. GSK is not buying a niche. It is buying a foothold in the most important battlefield in modern medicine. The problem, of course, is that everyone else knows this too, which is precisely why you end up paying a 40% premium to win. And here is why the timing is so important, and my first real opinion on this. These are not science fair projects that might pay off in 10 years. Both lead drugs are already under review by the American regulator, the FDA, with decision dates, what the industry calls PDUFA dates, in September and November of 2026. That is the genius of the timing, if it works. GSK is not buying a distant dream. It is buying 2 drugs that could be approved and generating sales within months of the deal closing. It is about as close to the finish line as a clinical stage acquisition gets. You are paying a premium precisely because most of the risk has already been retired. But now let me tell you why GSK is doing this at all. Because the motivation is everything. GSK is walking toward a patent cliff. Like every big pharmaceutical company, its most profitable drugs are protected by patents that eventually expire. And when they do, cheap generics flood in and the revenue collapses almost overnight. GSK has major products heading toward that cliff over the coming years. When your best sellers are about to lose protection, you have two choices. Invent new blockbusters in your own labs, which takes a decade and often fails, or go out and buy them. GSK has chosen to buy. And this is where the irony becomes almost painful, which is my second take. 10 years ago, in 2015, GSK essentially exited cancer. It sold its oncology portfolio to Novartis in a giant asset swap, deciding that its future lay elsewhere, in vaccines and consumer health. Cancer at the time was deemed not core. Now, a decade later, oncology is the hottest, fastest growing, most lucrative field in all of medicine. And GSK is paying $10.6 billion to rebuild the very business it sold. It is a near-perfect example of getting the strategic call wrong at the worst possible moment. Selling the future when it was cheap and buying it back when it is expensive. That is a $10 billion lesson in the cost of being early to leave a market. Let me be fair and give you the genuine bull case, because it is strong. First, oncology is where the growth is. Full stop, and GSK cannot afford to be absent from it. Second, these specific drugs are near approval and could be best in class in their niche. That is a rare combination of low regulatory risk and high commercial upside. Third, GSK has said the deal should become accretive to sales and core operating profit in 2027, and to earnings per share by 2029. In other words, management believes this pays for itself within a few years. And fourth, precision oncology drugs like these can command very high prices and very loyal prescribing, because for the right patient, they work where older drugs do not. Now, the bear case, because $10.6 billion in cash is not a small swing. First, that 40% premium is real money handed to Nuvalent's shareholders on day one. GSK has to earn it back. Second, until those FDA decisions actually land in September and November, this is still technically a bet. Approvals are expected, not guaranteed. Third, Big Pharma has a long, unglamorous history of overpaying for exciting biotech and then struggling to integrate it. The science is one thing. Turning it into a smoothly selling commercial product is another. And fourth, GSK is spending its firepower on a narrow niche. If the launch disappoints, there is no easy do-over on $10 billion. So what should you actually watch from here? 3 things. 1. Those two PDUFA dates in September and November of 2026. Approvals turn this from a bet into a business. Any delay or rejection is a serious problem. 2. The price. Watch whether analysts start calling this deal rich or cheap as more detail emerges. The market's verdict on the premium tells you a lot. And 3. The pattern. GSK is signaling loudly that it is back in the cancer game and hunting. This may be the first of several oncology moves, not the last. Here is my final thought, and it is the reason this deal matters even if you never buy a share of GSK. This is what the twilight of a patent cliff looks like from the inside. A giant, cash-rich, slightly anxious company staring at the expiry of its old moneymakers, reaching for its checkbook instead of its laboratory. Buying growth is faster than building it, but it is also an admission. It says the pipeline you grew yourself was not enough. Sometimes that check is the smartest thing a company ever does, and sometimes it is the sound of a business trying to buy back a future it should never have sold. $10.6 billion says GSK is deadly serious about cancer again. Whether that is vision or panic, whether they are buying brilliance or buying back their own mistake, depends on 2 envelopes from the FDA that will not be opened until the autumn. So what is your verdict? Smart, aggressive bet on the future of cancer treatment, or a desperate, overpriced scramble to fix a decade-old mistake? Let me know in the comments. If you want more breakdowns of the deals quietly reshaping the companies you rely on, subscribe. I do this every week, and I will see you in the next one.